The stars had never seemed so distant. Laria stood in the cargo hold of the ship, the humming of the engines a distant pulse beneath her feet. For 2 years, she had been a passenger, drifting between worlds, a nameless face among the countless who boarded the starliner for a future of uncertainty. The galaxy had stretched its dark, infinite reach around her, pulling her from one outpost to another. She had heard rumors of distant planets, whispered tales of civilizations that had risen and fallen in the blink of an eye.
She had no home. No purpose. Not anymore.
Laria had once been a brilliant scientist, a biologist whose research had spanned decades. She had been hailed as one of humanity's greatest minds, yet it was her curiosity that had ultimately led her to this end. The mysterious call from the star system known as Vorta Prime had been her undoing. A planet thought to be uninhabitable, teeming with unknown dangers. But it had something that the scientists and diplomats had wanted, something no one could define. It was supposed to be a routine mission: arrive, study, document, leave. But the moment her ship had entered the planet's orbit, things had gone wrong. The shuttle systems began to malfunction, and the ship's crew vanished without a trace. Laria had been left behind, a lone survivor. Now, she was trapped in an unknown world, with no way to communicate with the outside. The planet was alive. The air shimmered with strange energies, the ground shifting beneath her as if it had a mind of its own. She had always been curious. Now, that curiosity had brought her to the edge of her own survival. Days stretched into weeks, and the hunger gnawed at Laria's stomach. But the hunger was not just for food.
No, it was something deeper. A need to understand.
A need to uncover the truth behind Vorta Prime's mysteries. One evening, as the twin moons rose over the horizon, casting pale light over the jagged rocks, Laria found something, a structure. A monument unlike anything she had seen before. It was ancient, older than any civilization known to humanity, yet there was a strange sense of life emanating from it, as though the very stones were alive, pulsing with energy. Her hands trembled as she approached, the ground beneath her feet trembling in response. The monument beckoned her closer. As she reached out, her fingers brushing against the smooth surface of the structure, a jolt of energy surged through her body. Her mind exploded with images, a flash of lights, a vision of beings far older than human civilization, and the terrifying sense of something watching her. The structure, it was alive.
And it was aware of her.
She had no words for what happened next. She collapsed to the ground, her body racked with visions of distant galaxies, of battles fought by ancient beings, of power and knowledge far beyond human comprehension.
And then, it stopped.
The structure ceased its pulsating energy, and in its place stood an object, a crystal, floating just inches above the ground. It shimmered with an otherworldly glow. Laria had no choice. She reached out and took it. The crystal was warm in her hand, almost alive. As soon as she held it, a flood of understanding washed over her.
Knowledge. Power.
The history of the galaxy unfolded in her mind, ancient civilizations, forgotten technologies, and forgotten gods. But most importantly, Laria could feel the surge of power coursing through her veins. She was no longer just a scientist. No longer just a survivor.
She was something more. Something terrifying.
With the crystal in her possession, Laria felt a shift within herself. Her body burned with newfound strength, her senses heightened to an almost unbearable level. She could hear the hum of distant ships, the faintest vibrations in the air, the pulse of energy flowing beneath the planet's surface. Her mind expanded, and she saw the true potential of the crystal. It was not just a relic.
It was a key.
A key to something much greater than she could comprehend. And with it, she could reshape the galaxy. As Laria's powers grew, so did her sense of purpose. The galaxy, with all its conflict and strife, needed something, or someone, to break the cycle. For too long, empires had bled entire worlds dry, consuming everything in their wake. The elite, the powerful, the corrupt, they thrived at the expense of the weak.
It had to end.
The first test of her power came when she encountered a ship in orbit above Vorta Prime. It was a transport vessel, carrying slaves to a far-off empire. The crew was unaware of her presence, but Laria could feel their every move, hear their thoughts, their secrets. The passengers were nothing more than cargo, and the crew was nothing more than vultures, scavenging the remains of planets they had decimated. With a thought, Laria disabled the ship's engines. She watched as the crew scrambled in panic. They had no idea what they were dealing with. A whisper in her mind told her to show no mercy. The galaxy had never known mercy. So why should she offer it? She reached out, her will bending the very fabric of space. The ship's hull groaned as if in pain, the metal twisting in response to her command. Within seconds, the ship was nothing but rubble, floating aimlessly in space.
The slaves were freed.
The crew, however,
was not so fortunate.
And in that moment, Laria realized something: she was not just a passenger anymore.
She was the storm. The word spread quickly.
Rumors of a new power, a force that could reshape the galaxy, spread like wildfire. Some called her a savior.
Others, a demon. But all feared her.
Laria did not care for titles.
She cared for results.
The galaxy was broken, and it was time for it to be rebuilt. She began her campaign in silence, moving through the stars like a shadow. She infiltrated the highest echelons of power, dismantling the galactic cartels, the tyrannical empires, and the corrupt regimes that had kept the galaxy in chains for centuries. She did not do it with armies. She did not need to. Her power was in her mind, in her ability to reshape reality with a thought. And as she tore down the walls of oppression, she gave the galaxy something it had not known for millennia: hope. But power comes with a price. And Laria knew that the old empires would never bow to her. They would never surrender willingly. Sooner or later, they would come for her.
And they did.
The largest fleet in the galaxy, a coalition of warlords and emperors, amassed in the Solar System, intent on eradicating the threat Laria posed. They were convinced that if they could capture her, they could control her power.
They were wrong.
Laria stood alone on the bridge of her starship, looking out at the approaching fleet. The galaxy was about to face its reckoning. With a single thought, she set the stars ablaze. Her powers ripped through the fabric of space itself, shattering the approaching fleet as if it were nothing more than a sandcastle before a tidal wave. The ships disintegrated, their crews obliterated by the force of her will. But Laria did not stop there. She turned her attention to the leaders of the fleets, the men and women who had lived in luxury, who had bled entire worlds dry. She made them feel the suffering they had inflicted. She made them experience the pain of those they had oppressed. And when it was done, Laria stood amidst the wreckage of their fleets. She was no longer just a survivor. She was the fire that had reshaped the galaxy.